Ooh, that looks tasty.
Welcome folks, Today the Hungry Gamer is back with another game review, and today we're talking about Encounters Shattered Wastes, designed by Ryan Farmer. And now what this game is this is a boss battler style game in which you are taking on the role of a different hero and you are trying to defeat these different bosses in one-off scenarios, though there is a campaign journey mode that you can kind of string various fights together and kind of go through all of the different heroes. And for this, you're going to be doing a dice rolling kind of action selection style game. Now, if you are not interested in how this game is played, and we'll jump into my final thoughts, then you can go to the timestamp on the screen right now. For those of us still here, let's talk about how this game is played. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to pick who you're going to fight, and I've picked the Guardian here, kind of the tutorial boss, and I've picked two heroes here, though I only have a player board set up for the Slayer here, though I also have the Lancer out there, and I'll kind of just talk about it, and I'll reference him a little bit as we go. Additionally, please make sure you turn on your Klingon subtitles, because if I make any mistakes in the rules overview, that's where you'll find the corrections. And also, thank you to the publisher for sending me this deluxe upgrade copy of the game. The deluxe upgrade means I have these acrylic standees. Obviously these are standees, but it doesn't look very good if they're like that, so I have them out of the stands. As well as the foil cards here and some extra dice. What you're going to be doing is fighting the boss, and when you hurt the boss enough, the boss is actually going to transform, kind of old school video game style, into another boss or its final form, and you'll have to fight it again. And at its core, this is kind of a game of attrition. The first thing I want to point out is every game, you will pick your heroes, and the heroes will have a different set of stats. We have magic points, we have hit points, we have how much damage they do, we have how many dice they roll when they attack, and then we have their critical value, and I'll talk about that in just a bit. Then they all have a different power, and down at the bottom, what you're going to see here are these values, and these are the options of cards that they have. So the Slayer here gets 2 of all of these different cards. There's 2 defense cards, 2 magic cards, 2 item cards, and 2 attack cards. And what they're going to do is they're going to get to pick 3 of these different cards they're going to use. Of particular import are the item cards here, which are for the most part single-use cards. You'll see flip face down when you use it, and while I'm not going to go into the details, sometimes there are cards that cause you to actually discard a card that you've used and then replace it with another of the same type. We will just say that I have selected 1 magic, 1 defense, and 1 attack card. Now, what's important here to note is on the top left is going to tell you how much magic it's going to cost you to activate the card, and then you'll do whatever it says on the card. You'll also note that it'll have something like a reaction, meaning you use this when something happens to you, and it tells you exactly when you use it. And then some of them will use more dice. In general, you're going to roll 1 die when you do an attack, though if I use this flash beam here, which costs 6 magic, it would actually allow me to roll 2 dice, and if I roll below 7, then the attack is a critical. And we'll notice that on a basic attack, the Slayer here can actually spend magic points to move cards from the stamina to the fatigue stack, which means nothing at the moment, but it will in just a bit. Now, let's talk about what's going to happen on any given turn. So at the beginning of the turn, what's going to happen is you are going to, in the refresh phase, you're going to roll dice for each character that is in a region, in a zone, that does not have an enemy in front of him. So in other words, if this enemy happened to be up here, then I would get to place 1 card from stamina over here out in front of the Lancer. So then I would take a card from here and I would place it in front of him. Then we would look over here at the enemy and see what their kind of reinforced value is. In this case it is 1, so we would roll a single die, 5, take 1 from here and place it on zone 5. If I'd rolled a 6, then nothing would be placed out. You'll notice the 2 different colors. These are melee attacks and these are magic attacks. The main difference there is, in general, that only matters if you have 2 targets in the same zone, in which case melee will attack the guy in front, or magic will attack the character in back. Then we move into the action phase. And in the action phase, what's going to happen is each character is going to get to do 2 actions. An action might be a move, where you are going to move orthogonally, though I will note the Lancer here actually has an ability that allows it to move anywhere at once in the front line. And then when it lands, it actually gets to do an attack. Or you can do a basic attack, in which case I'll just put him right there. And this is how that's going to work. What you're going to do is you're going to roll your dice. In this case, it is 1 die, as I showed you earlier. And you're going to roll it and compare it to your threat number. In this case, as you can see, my threat is 0. So as long as I equal or beat that number, then I have hit. So in this case, I have hit. Then I will take a look and see, did I crit? In which case, a critical is a 6 for me. So I did not crit. So I would do 2 damage to the targets in front of me. In this case, there's only 1 bad guy, but I would then take that and put it into the fatigue stack. Had there been a stack of multiple enemies in front of me, which is something that is possible, like so, then my first damage would have hit the top one, and then my second damage would hit the next one there. Then I'm going to look at the number of threat symbols on the bad guys that I killed, in this case 3, and go 1, 2, 3. And now hitting bad guys has become harder. That said, had I rolled my critical, which is a 6, then these bad guys here, rather than going into fatigue, would have gone up here into wounds. Additionally, I would not have gained any threat from that attack. I can also choose to use any of my abilities, which I explained a little bit earlier, but I'm not going to go into in depth here because there's a whole bunch of different abilities. Or you can take a recover action, in which case you could remove 1 status effect that you may have gotten from an enemy attack. Or, with that, you could roll a die and regain that many magic points. So if I'd used some magic and was down here, in this case I'd regain 1. Or you can reduce your threat by the value rolled, so in this case 1. It is important to note that if you ever roll a critical on your recover roll, then you can reduce your threat all the way down to 0, or reduce your magic all the way back up to maximum. The other thing that's important for me to point out that you're able to do is at any time you can shatter yourself, which means you're going to flip your card over, and I'll also point out now that should your threat ever reach 12, you will also shatter. When you shatter, you will flip over your board here, and you'll reset your health to whatever your new value is, as well as set your corruption to whatever the value is. And now this corruption is going to be the equivalent of your magic power. And again, you'll still have your threat, and that'll operate exactly the same, though that'll drop back down to 0. You'll have a new power, and you'll actually get rid of all of your previous abilities and replace them with however many abilities it says you get at the bottom of your card of these shattered abilities. And again, they will cost a certain amount of corruption to spend. And this is important because if your corruption ever goes over the 12, then you are out of the game. And I should also point out that you also have fancy dandy separate standees to show that you have shattered. Now, after all the heroes have gone, then it is the bad guy's turn to defend. Then what you're going to do is you're going to look at each area, and if the number of threat markers matches the value over here, in this case it's 9, this is the tutorial boss, so it's very hard for that to happen, but if it does, then you flip over the top card, and whatever the effect it says is what's going to happen to all characters on the board. In this case it is 1 damage. It's also possible to get any of these various status effects on your characters. There's a whole bunch of them. Should you happen to have cards directly in front of a character, then you will reveal the top card, and that character will take whatever effect is shown, in this case 1 damage. Additionally, I'll point out that should you have an empty space in front of a character, then you'll draw a boss card, and they're in general stronger. After a boss card is played, it goes to the bottom of the boss deck, so it will cycle back through. Now, once there are no cards remaining in the stamina stack, the boss is staggered, and that means every time you hit them, the cards will go into the wound stack. Once there are no cards remaining here and you deal damage to the boss, then the boss will change to its final form, like so, and it will get new abilities, new stats, and new cards, like so. Then you'll take all the cards, you'll reshuffle them, place them back in stamina, and you'll start again. And then you're going to do the same thing against the upgraded boss until all of the cards again are into wounds, and you damage it again, and then the boss will be defeated. And that's how this game works. So, what do I like about this game? The first thing is, I think the art is really cool if you are into that bit style art. Though that said, I do like the art on the character cards as well, but I think if you were into that 8-bit or 24-bit or whatever the heck it is style art, then it's really, really cool. Especially if you get the upgraded acrylic standees, which are just fantastic. I love those, though the art on the standees is just as good. The next thing I'll say is it does have very good character variety. The characters play really differently, even though at their core you're just getting different cards, which is what is adjusting your abilities based off kind of what you draw out of the deck. Especially because I didn't show this in the overview, but a lot of the abilities kind of let you cycle the deck, let you cycle through new abilities. You use it, you lose it, you get something new. And I think that does keep the game very fresh, even if you're playing the same character over and over again. So I really like that. But even beyond that, just with the stat loadouts and the type of abilities that you can get, and the innate abilities, and how you can shatter and flip over and then have completely new abilities, it's amazing variety. Really, really good variety. The next thing I'll say is the game itself has a good puzzle vibe to it, because there's a lot of, okay, if I attack this card here, I'm going to get this much threat. That's going to put me at risk of having a hard time to hit or whatever. So instead, I'm going to use this ability, then I'm going to use this item here that's going to get rid of my threat, and the next turn I'm going to do this, or okay, I'm going to do this, but if you do this, then I'll do this. And so there's a lot more puzzle to this than you might normally think with a boss battler style game, and I really do appreciate that. The next thing, similar to the character variety, it's really good boss variety. I think even just between the first and second forms of the boss, really good variety, and then all the different bosses, the variety on those is really, really good. The difficulty levels as they change are also really, really good. To be fair, I haven't beaten all of them, but I've beaten a lot of the bosses, and I've lost to a lot of the bosses, so I really do like that. And then thematically speaking, this is a game that doesn't have a ton of theme because a lot of it is kind of make your own story as you go. But thematically speaking, I love the final form of the boss. That is so video game. And you can even kind of just imagine on the video game screen that's going just flipping back and forth, and boom, suddenly it looks like this other bad guy, new abilities. And I really do appreciate that. I like that a lot. So what are my quibbles with the game? Well, the first thing is there is a little bit of a disconnect between the card art and the standee art, which is something that I already mentioned. And then, of course, if you don't like bit art, then you're going to be a little bit disappointed. The next thing is some of the character combinations you can have, they don't work if you want to win. Or you can win, but it becomes a slog and it is boring. Now, is that bad? Not necessarily, but you really do have to pay attention to having the right types of combinations of characters, because I tried a very unoptimized combo just to see how it would work against the first boss, and it took forever for me to win. I did, but it's the first tutorial boss, and so some of the combinations, they just don't work, and that might be something that's disappointing to you if you want to kind of try all the weird stuff. Well, some of the weird stuff you're just going to lose. The next thing I'll say is, because it is a dice game, it has some swinginess, and for the most part, I don't care in this game. I like the way you're using kind of the threat, and if you keep your threat down, then you're going to be able to hit with whatever you're rolling. The dice, the abilities that let you roll multiple dice, they do cool things. If you roll low, all of that, fantastic. However, I despise the dice swinginess on the recover step, because there is nothing more annoying than, okay, I'm going to do a recover, and you roll a 1, and you get 1 magic point, or drop your threat by 1, because that means now you have to waste your entire turn and do it again and hope you don't roll a 1 again. Now, in theory, I'm sure math-wise that is balanced out by you can roll your crit and get everything back, but the negative feeling of getting a 1, especially getting a 1 twice in a row, far outweighs the bonus and the benefit and the good feels of rolling the crit on that. And so that bothered, that's one that actually bothered me. That said, just general dice swinginess might bother you, but you're not playing this game if you don't like dice. And the last thing that I'll say is it has a cool journey mode of you kind of can use all the characters, and if they die, and they're out, and you kind of move through. But because there's not a ton of story in this game, it's more of just a, okay, I'm just going to keep playing through and see how many bosses I can beat before I've lost all the characters. And so it's fun and it's neat, but it doesn't grab me in a way that is particularly story-driven, which is something that I like a lot. But if you don't care about story, then great, you're gonna love it. So there you have it, folks. That is Encounters Shattered Wastes. As always, if I've made any mistakes on the rules overview, please let me know in the comments with the timestamp so I can get that in the Klingon subtitles. If you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share, and maybe become a channel member. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.